Okay, it's Sunday, which means against my better judgment, it's time to go to Reddit and see what we can find in this hive of scum and villainy. So I've been to the Overwatch University subreddit ahead of time and just scraped all the questions off the first couple of pages, and we're going to answer them now. Why is Dragon Ball FighterZ playing in the background if we're talking about Overwatch? Dude, we could all be dead tomorrow. Don't need to worry about these things, it's irrelevant. If you're wondering which side I'm on, it's whichever one has the... I've got the fucking nameplates up for once, I found out how to do that. I'm the Mad Dog of Shimano, so I'm that side. So, first off, is it possible to be good at aiming with both Ashe and Widow? And the person was basically saying they play a couple games as one and then they're bad at the other one comparatively. And I mean, yes, it is possible to be good at aiming on both heroes. The thing is that you need to just develop muscle memory for both of them independently, because they don't aim exactly the same way. You can try and make it so that like their scoped accuracy is 1-to-1 with each other if you go through like the necessary steps to figure that out, which this person actually did. But ultimately they still won't play the exact same way. There used to be this thing where people thought, like, if you were good at McCree, you'd be better at Widowmaker, or vice versa, because they were both the precision hit scan DPS. Doesn't work that way. They don't aim the same way, unfortunately, so you have to just build muscle memory for both characters. And, you know, if you've been playing one and then you suddenly go over to playing the other one, you know, it's going to be a little bit of there's going to be an adaptation period there if you've just been going from one and then switched to the other. Yeah. But it is possible to be good at both, yes. It's just building muscle memory takes a long time by itself, especially in regards to aim. So if you're talking about building muscle memory for two different characters, both of whom very highly reward, like, precise clicking of men's, you know, it's going to be a problem. But yes, it is possible, short answer. It's just hard. Next up is, does anyone actually enjoy playing in games with Bastion? And, no, I don't think anyone really does. The thing is with Bastion, is that he dominates the entire fucking game, you know? Like, when one person picks Bastion, that forces 11 people to play around Bastion, doesn't it? Because all the people on Bastion's team have to play around Bastion, because suddenly, well, we gotta try and keep this fucker alive, and the enemy team have to all play around Bastion, because, well, you can't just fucking ignore the guy, can you, unfortunately? So, that's like the thing with Bastion. It's just so not enjoyable, and like, it's already, like, hard to get your team to work together in this game. And Bastion, like, pretty much flatly can't be dealt with as a singular entity. Like, it always requires teamwork. So, if you can't get your teammates to work together, Bastion is gonna just kind of fuck you, because one guy can't really do much about Bastion, unless the Bastion is playing by himself, but as we just established, 11 people have to play around Bastion, don't they? It just forces the game into such, like... It forces the game to be so slow, and, like... Overwatch is a very fast game, you know? And that's clearly, like, the intention. And then as soon as Bastion shows up, as soon as Bastion's in the game, the game just slows to a fucking crawl, doesn't it? And one team spends 20 minutes just sat in the fucking choke point, like, please let me in, Bastion. Please let me in. And they don't let you in. And Bastion's fucking everywhere right now as well. Like, it feels like every game or every other game has a Bastion in it, because fucking Batista shows up, and oh, suddenly look how much better bunker comps, and therefore Bastion, by extension, became. But Batista also just works well with Bastion in general, so... you know, there's no real takeaway from this particular one. Basically, you know, playing against Bastion sucks, yeah, and, you know, that's why now, every week or so, there's a question to the effect of, hey, how do you deal with the Orisa Bastion comp? Yeah, it's really hard, especially just because of the way, like, getting people to work together in Overwatch is, unfortunately. There's no real takeaway with that. It's just, feels bad, man. So next up, what are the rules following a tied first round? So the question was worded a little bit awkwardly, but basically the question was like, when it's expanded upon, the great question ended up being like, why is it sometimes a game ends in a draw, sometimes only one team gets an extension after the first round, sometimes other people, both teams get an extension after the first round? Why is it, like, weird? So, the rules for it are, this doesn't matter on payload, because if you're on payload and you tied the first round, like, both teams are getting the extension in the second round, regardless. They're both getting a minute added on. So, this only applies to hybrid and 2CP maps. The way it works is, if one team finishes in overtime, and the other team has more than a minute left, neither team gets the time extension. So the team that had 0 finished in overtime, they don't get to attack because they don't get the time extension. If both teams finished with less than a minute in overtime, both teams are going to get the extension. Because the way the system works is, if one team gets a time extension, both teams get a time extension. Regardless, they will always give it to both if one's going to get it. So if one team finishes in overtime, the other team's got less than a minute, both teams are getting it. Both teams are getting the extension, and both teams get to attack. One team in overtime, other team more than a minute, no overtime, no extension given to either team, so only one team gets to attack. This is why it doesn't matter on payload maps, because if there's no, like, fixed objective on it, then it doesn't matter, because, like, you basically can't draw on payload maps. You can, but it's extremely difficult. So, because there's no, like, checkpoint at the beginning, it just gives both teams the extension regardless, because otherwise it would really suck if one team didn't get the extension and they had to hold the enemy team from moving it from 0.1 meters, right? So that's why payload maps don't count. So that's basically the thing, is, like, what matters is if one team's in overtime and the other team has more than a minute left. That's the only situation that can cause one team to get the extension and the other team to not get the extension. As long as the other team finished with less than a minute, or if the other team finishes with 0.1 seconds on the clock, they will get the extension as well. This is why finishing in overtime is worse than finishing with 0.1 seconds. Because you might go, oh, well, 0.1 seconds, big fucking whoop, right? Sometimes that 0.1 seconds is the only reason you got a time extension. So, that's how it works. It's very weird, like, it's a weird system, but basically it comes down to one team finishing in overtime versus the other team finishing with more than a minute left. That's the only thing that causes a team to miss a round, or miss a chance to attack. I feel like I could have explained that more succinctly, but that's just not who I am. So next up is, what can you combo to outdamage Transcendence? So, Nano Blade outdamages Transcendence, because if you cut and then dash immediately after cutting the person, then you kill them. That does just enough damage to kill someone through Transcendence. I'm gonna cycle through to try and find a different guy, because I thought it would kind of, like, mix it up a little bit, but I guess not. What was I saying? Barrage can kill someone through Transcendence, but it is a little bit, alright, I guess I'm just gonna fucking stop right there. Whatever, that's fine. We'll go to fight. So much for the fucking nameplate. Barrage can kill people through Transcendence, but it's a little bit iffy depending on how far away Pharah is sometimes, but if you damage boost the Pharah at all, it's going to kill him through Transcendence, any kind of damage boost. A Dragon plus Reinhardt swinging in will kill someone through Transcendence. Let's see. Damage boosted Ashe can headshot someone and kill them. Nano boosted McCree can kill someone with a headshot. Obviously Widow can just headshot people, so can Hanzo, and that's gonna kill him. What else do we have? Deadeye can kill people through Transcendence. Yeah, anything that one-shots people is going to kill them through Transcendence. So, Tire, Pulse Bomb, what else we got? Self-Destruct, you know. Let's see, is there anything weird, anything else? There's definitely there's definitely another combo that can do it that I can't think of right now, but, outside of, like, you know, there's, like, multiple, like, if we comboed, like, Dragon Blade, Dragon Strike, and a Reinhardt swinging, that's gonna kill him, you know, but, like, we're starting to add a lot of multipliers on at that point, aren't we? Yeah, those are, like, the... Nano Blade's the big one, damage boosted Ashe, Nano boosted McCree, the Dragon Strike Vert plus Reinhardt swinging. Those are like the easiest to get ones. If you stuck a bunch of damage multipliers on Bastion, he'd be able to do it. So if you like had a damage boost plus Batista ultimate, then I'm pretty sure he's gonna kill him through it, because Bastion of course does a lot of fucking damage. Just one damage boost I don't think is enough. It would need to be at least 2 for Bastion, but, like, those are, like, the obvious easy ones. Otherwise, we need to start attaching more things to it. So those are the easy ones. Next up is, how do I improve other roles when I have climbed as one role? So this is most commonly felt by people who climbed as tank or healer and now want to learn how to play a DPS. So... me, personally, I don't give a fuck what my SR is, so I'll just play the other roles regardless, and just like, yeah, I'm gonna lose games, whatever, it doesn't matter, but I don't care about what my SR is, so it doesn't make much difference to me. Other than that, you know, the obvious one, and the one most people will say, is get another account, so that you can just practice it on that. Easier said than done if you play on PC. If you play on console, apparently it doesn't matter. You can just make multiple accounts to play it quite easily. So I'm told. I don't play on the console. Unfortunately, if you're on PC, you have to buy another copy of Overwatch. That's just how it has to be. Which is a bit restrictive, but unfortunate. It's how it has to be. Only other options are, like, play quick play, which I don't recommend because it's a waste of time. If it's a mechanical hero, you can play, like, deathmatch, because you can practice mechanics by just fighting other people, so deathmatch is good for that. Quick play is like a waste of time in terms of learning to play somebody, because you can't even navigate the map the same way in quick play, because the enemy team is probably something ridiculous like 3 snipers and a Mei, right? 3 snipers, Mei, Bastion, Torbjorn. Like, it's completely so far removed from the rest of the game that, like, you don't learn a fucking thing. So, those are pretty much your only options. Personally, I recommend just not really giving a fuck, but tragically, easier said than done, you know? If you give a fuck, you can't really just stop giving a fuck on demand, you know? Which is unfortunate. Life would be significantly easier if we could, wouldn't it? So those are pretty much your only options, really. As far as Overwatch goes, you don't have a great variety of options in terms of learning like this. There was something they did in League of Legends, and they backtracked on this real fucking fast, but I think you could probably put this system into place in Overwatch quite easily. What they were doing in League of Legends very recently, which they dropped like a fucking within weeks, but like I thought was a good idea, and you could put this in Overwatch, was it started giving separate rankings based on the role you were playing. So in League of Legends, you've got top lane, mid lane, bottom lane, AD carry, support, and jungle. And it would give you an independent rating for each of those roles, because they're all completely different skill sets, right? So I could be a diamond top laner, but a gold mid laner, for example. So I think you could do that for Overwatch pretty easily, right? Because you've only got like the 3 roles. You've only got tank, healer, DPS. So you could rank it independent, like based on each of those, and say like I'm a gold tank, but I'm a platinum support or something, you know? The problem is, because of how Overwatch is, you can change between the roles mid-round, right? So it would need to have some kind of way to determine which one you played the most, basically, if we don't just get the roll queue, which would obviously be the simplest solution. But, you know, simple solutions are not really how the Overwatch team likes to do things, are they? So, you know, I think that would be a cool system to implement, because then you don't have to worry about it, do you? Because you can go, alright, well, you know, I'm playing support, I'd like to play DPS. Oh, well, it doesn't matter, because they'll place me differently for DPS, right? And then I can, like, learn off of that. So I think that would be a nice system, but tragically, I would estimate our chance of seeing such a system to be close to 0%. You know. If we just had the role select, that would simplify things greatly, but... what can you do, right? So those are your only options, really, sadly. So I'll be honest with you, this is not a real question. I just picked this one because I kind of wanted to make fun of the person because of the incredible amount of hypocrisy in the thread, basically. And it was, why do you DPS quick play players not switch? And it was because this person's trying to learn how to play Widowmaker, so they were just insta-locking Widowmaker and not switching. So then, you know, the obvious counter-argument is like, well, why don't you switch, right? And someone in the thread was like, well, why don't you ask yourself the same question? Don't you think maybe they're trying to get the same thing out of it as you? Also, quick play is not really the serious game mode, so people don't usually take it all that seriously. And the person OP responded just going, yeah, but still. That was it. That was his whole response to that one. So, you know, I think it's really funny. So I'm just gonna go into quick play, insta-lock Widowmaker and not switch, then go to Reddit and be like, yo, why did these DPS quick player players not switch? We got 5 DPS guys, come on, why aren't you switching? Come on, man. Come on. So I really just wanted to make fun of that person, mostly because, like, well, why don't you ask yourself the same question, blah, 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 and just goes, yeah, but still. Do as I say, not as I do, and all that, you know. So, yeah, there's no point to that. I just wanted to make fun of the person because, goddamn, what a hypocrite. So the next actual one is... So, I win in comp, lose next game, win in comp, lose next game. Does this mean that I am at my correct rank? And not necessarily, but probably. So if you're in a situation where you're winning a game, then losing a game, winning a game, losing a game, you are probably close to where you should be SR-wise, but it doesn't necessarily mean you're in the exact correct place, but you're probably within a tier, right? If you're actually a gold player, but you're, like, over in silver or platinum, that's close enough that you would probably start to see this kind of game, like, this kind of, win-loss ratio. The thing is that it's not, like, guaranteed to be true, because, like, the way like, any kind of, like, competitive ladder operates, basically, is... You're not gonna win every game. You know, we've got variations of this. We've got the 40-20-40 rule, and we've got the 33-33-33 rule. I've heard all kinds of, like, different numbered breakdowns on it, but I like the 40-20-40 one personally. And it goes that you're gonna win 40% of the games through no fault of your own. You're gonna lose 40% of the games through no fault of your own. Just, like, nothing you can do about it. Someone on your team is gonna disconnect, you're gonna have a troll, they're gonna have a troll, something like that. Is going to happen to one of those teams, so you'll win or lose through no fault of your own 80% of the time, right? And then the remaining 20% of the games are the ones that you actually have potential to affect the outcome of the game yourself, right? So, most people are going to climb with, like, a 50%, like a 51% win ratio, or very close to. If you have, like, a 55% win ratio, that's fucking incredible. Like, that's actually a very high win-loss ratio for the average person. If you're an exceptionally skilled player, like, you know, the pro players are, the streamers and all that, usually are more skilled than your average player, you'll see, like, they will win a lot of games. And I think this is the issue people have, where, like, most of your experience in Overwatch or any competitive game is going to be win a game, lose a game, win a game, lose a game, win a game, win a game, lose a game, win a game, lose a game, win a game, lose a game, lose a game. You know, it's going to be something like that, right? The breakdown is going to be pretty close to 50%. But if you watch the streamers, the pro players, the coaches, like, they often win way more than that, right? Like, they often win, like, 60% of their games or something like that. And, like, multiple people have done a variation of a series like Bronze 2 Grandmaster, one tricking a hero, right? And that gives people a really skewed perspective on how their games are gonna go. Win one, lose one, win one, lose one, win one, lose one is like what you're gonna experience most of the time, unless for some reason or another you have strayed dramatically far from where you're actually meant to be. Because if you've ended up being placed way higher than you should be, or way lower than you should be, you should win or lose more disproportionately. But otherwise, if you're like where you should be, or like a rank or two to the side, this is what your games are gonna look like. Like, that's the normal experience with the game for your average player. As, you know, this is the unfortunate thing with, like, the easy access we have to watching other people's games, right? Is you can watch these highly skilled players, which are the ones most people are gonna watch, and then be like, wow, they win a lot of games, man, so I should probably be winning as many games as that, right? Like, I'm pretty good, I should probably be winning like this. Oh, fucking my teammates, though, right? And that's how it all begins, but yeah, it means if you're not at your correct rank, you're very close to where your correct rank should be. Because that's how most people's experience are going to break down. That's kind of the only point to it. This wasn't a great week for looking at questions, to be honest with you. This was one of those weeks where most of the questions I was looking at on the Reddit were some variation of, what happened? I dropped 700 SR and now I keep losing games. No, like, one sentence, like, one paragraph of text and then just, like, what do, you know? Or, I just can't win games. What's the matter with me? One paragraph of context, no video attached. What do? How to climb? You know, there was a lot of, like, vague shit like that this week, so it wasn't a terribly good week, which is why we've had a lot of filler or extremely, like, pointless questions. Needless to say, this is also likely to be a shorter video than usual. It wasn't a very good week for questions, unfortunately. Next up is, how do you force yourself into learning a new habit? This person specifically was talking about things like looking at the kill feed or checking flanks and stuff like that, where they are starting a game and they're like, alright, check the kill feed, check the kill feed, check the kill feed, and then they forget to do it during the game. For that kind of thing, what I recommend doing is setting up a metronome. And there are all kinds of websites that can do this. And you just set up the metronome to tone, like, just say, for instance, every 5 seconds. But, which I would say is, like, the upper limit on what you should go for. Like, you could do, like, 2 seconds, 3 seconds, somewhere, like, between 2 and 5 seconds, I think, is what you should do it. And just every time you hear it, that's when you look at the kill feed, that's when you, like, check your flanks, that's basically when you just, like, look at everything on your UI real quick, right? And then the theory is that eventually you won't need to use the metronome anymore, because it will have become muscle memory. You'll do it instinctively after a while, instead of needing the metronome to remind you to do it. And then, so you'll build the habit like that. So, you know, if the habit is something a little bit more situational, you know, you can't really do that kind of thing, because the metronome only works if it's something you want to be doing regularly throughout a game. If the habit you want is something more to the effect of, like, what could it even be? Like, if it's like getting into the habit of not using Fire Strike once you've built up Earth Shatter, you know, that's building a new habit, but it's not one that's really going to be helped by a metronome, unfortunately. Unless, I guess, if you put it to, like, every 6 seconds, and then you're like, alright, don't push the Fire Strike button. Great job, me. You know, like, something like that. You can't really build a habit like that, so with something like a metronome, so that more comes down to just being, like, really cognizant of what you're doing, and just, like, chastising yourself every time you do the thing that you're trying to break the habit of. Or trying to build the new habit of, or the thing is, you know, we've all got stupid monkey/lizard brains, and it takes a really long time for us to take things in sometimes, so, you know, you've just got, like, you gotta just be really aware of what you're doing, and every time you do the thing you're trying to break, or don't do the thing you're trying to build the habit for, you just chastise yourself for it, and eventually it's gonna take. Eventually your brain is gonna be like, alright, I understand now, gotcha, we'll do that from now on. But that can take a very long time, depending on the person. But, that's pretty much all you can do, really. I do think the metronome is really good for, like, the kill feed one in particular, or just checking flanks and all that, because it's something that's so set and routine, right? You want to do it every few seconds. So if you just have an external thing that reminds you to do it every few seconds, that was a terrible fucking drop combo, holy shit. If you have something to just set to remind you to do it every few seconds, it won't take you long to build that into just being habit. And then, hey, job's done. Other things, you know, it's pretty much just going to be a really tedious affair. Like, unfortunately, you know, there aren't many shortcuts for it. At least none that I know of, anyways. There you go. Particularly for kill feed, stuff like that's really good, though. So, next up, and this is actually the last one, and to be honest with you, I don't really have anything to say about it. I think just, like, one of the guys that responded in this thread, just, like, fucking nailed the response to this one. So, it was, why is it the lower rank I am, the harder the games are to win? And this person was one of the people that was like, I've dropped like 600 SR in like the last month or something like that from where I was placed, what do? And one of the people who responded to the thread said, and I'm going to quote the whole thing for you. So, quote, perception, tilt, and nothing else. You are putting far too much pressure on yourself for nothing. Nobody except you gives a flying fuck about your SR. Really. Nobody except you cares about it. Stop caring and you will climb. It is much easier said than done, I know, but until you get over your SR and its irrelevant ego connection, it will be hard. You must learn and apply a competitive mindset. It will not stop tilt, but it will greatly enhance your overall attitude and therefore performance. And that fucking nails it. It's true. No one gives a fuck about your SR except you. And as soon as you stop caring about it, it's a much more liberating feeling. That's why I try to have the mindset of I'm not playing to try and win. I'm trying to play to improve. And you might say, well, why are you playing if you aren't playing to win? And I would argue that if you're playing to improve, that's virtually indistinguishable from playing to win. It's just a difference of mindset from your perspective, and it just makes it easier to improve, because if you're spending every game worrying about the fact that you're going to drop roughly 25 SR if you lose, then you're not going to spend as much time, like, thinking clearly, you're not gonna be learning as quickly, you're gonna perform worse on average, so just dropping that kind of mindset is very important. So I just thought that guy fucking nailed it. Just, no one gives a shit except you do, don't worry about your fucking SR. True. Though there is something else to say about it, you know, why is it the lower rank I am, the harder the games are to win? So there's something else to say about that, which is just that certain ranks play differently to other ranks. Well, a lot of ranks play differently to other ranks, right? They're like a different ecosystem to each other, basically, where in one rank you can do something that we will not be able to get away with in another rank, right? So, for example, like, if you're playing against a Widowmaker, right? If you're in a low rank, then you can just walk around an open space in front of that Widowmaker, and she's probably gonna miss more shots than she's gonna hit, right? Especially if you're in a lower, like, the lower you get, the more true that's gonna be. But the higher you get, like, more situations are going to happen where you peek your head around a corner and you just immediately die before you even fucking saw the Widowmaker, right? So these two ranks, you need to respond dramatically differently to the Widowmaker being there, you know? That's just an easy example. And, like, some ranks you can depend on your teammates to know roughly what they're going to do, so you can play around that because they have a certain expected behavior, right, that you can rely upon to happen. So, as soon as you can rely on your teammates / your enemies to do one act in a way, then you can play around that, and then, hey, you can play differently in that SR, because now there's a certain expected behavior. But if you're in, like, a lower rank, there's no kind of expected behavior, right? This is the thing with, like, trying to help people who are in low ranks climb, right, is you can only really give them advice for helping themselves, because in low ranks you can't rely on the enemy team or your teammates to act in a particular way, because them acting in a particular way is based on them learning certain aspects of the game. So until they've learnt those aspects of the game, they aren't going to behave reliably. So you can't teach them these kinds of things. In the lower ranks, you can only really teach people things that are helpful for them, right? Like, you can teach an Ana how to get more help out of, more use out of their grenades, you know? You can't give them, like, set options on who to nano boost, because who we determine as a good nano boost is largely determined by that person knowing what the fuck they're doing with their hero, right? So, like, we would say, you want to nano boost the Genji. But that is based on the Genji knowing what the fuck he's doing. A bronze SR Genji is extremely likely to waste a nanoblade because he doesn't know what he's doing. Tragically, a nanoblade is not actually automatic. The Genji does actually kind of need to know what to do. So you can't teach people these things reliably. And this is the problem with, like, people who are stuck in low SRs as well, is that, like, they look at the people who are in higher SRs and they're like, well, how do I get to this point? These games look nothing like my games. What can I possibly take from these games? And all you can take is, like, what the individual person is doing, right? Like, where they're standing, how they're using their cooldowns, how they use their ultimates. You can take that kind of information away, but you can't take, like, the team play aspects from it, or, like, the counterplay aspects from it, because the enemy team are going to be doing all kinds of wacky shit. They're not going to be coming at you from, like, predictable angles. Like, you're going to get flanked by weird people, right? Like, if you're in fucking bronze, you're going to get flanked by a Moira. Moira's an awful flanker, but if you're in a low SR, you're going to get flanked by a fucking Moira pretty fucking frequently, right? Like, you can't rely on these things, so you have to adapt. It's gotten quite rambling and incoherent, but you have to adapt to the rank that you're in, because it's not going to play identically to every other rank, unfortunately. So the lower you get, if you were used to playing in a higher SR and you're now in a lower SR because you just went on, like, a really bad losing streak, like the placement algorithm got really weird next season or something, like, who knows, what, any kind of fucking reason, right? Then you have to adjust now to your teammates doing different shit and the enemy team doing different shit. They're not going to act the same way. This, I find, is most commonly seen by people who were above Diamond and for some reason or another end up in Platinum, where suddenly they can't win games anymore because Platinum is the worst SR bracket in existence, because that's where people have developed egos but not the skills to back up their egos. So this is where you're most likely, I find, to find the quintuple DPS teams, because they're got in their head that they're God's gift to Overwatch and they're gonna hard carry on Widowmaker. And, you know, you've got to adapt to that. You've got to get used to playing in that ecosystem now, because that's where you are, unfortunately. So, you know, that's why when you're in a lower rank than the one you were previously, games feel harder to win, because you have to adapt to the situation that you're in. And most people are not very good at adapting very quickly, I find. This is something I've also learned from playing fighting games, is that if a lot of people do not know how to adapt to things, but the faster you can adapt to a situation, the better you're going to be. I've kind of run out of things to say at this point, so now I'm just going to go rambling off while we wait for this game to finish. Because, like, of all the fighting games I've played so far, like, universally, I will lose the first round I play against the person. Like, sometimes I beat them if I'm, like, way better than them, but if I'm not, I'm gonna lose the first game most of the time. But then after that first game, I take a sip, I just sit back for a second and go, alright, so what the fuck happened? And then I come into the next game, like, clean slate, everything's reset, but now I know what the other person's gonna do, right? I've been watching, I've noticed what their habits are. I've noticed that, like, oh, this guy fucking loves to grab. This guy fucking loves the overhead, right? So then I'm ready for it. And that makes it easier. Oh. My man gave up, but I was not gonna do it. Have some fucking self-respect, dude. Don't just, like, put the fucking controller down. Like, play the game. Yeah, so, you know, adaptation is an important skill in, like, competitive video games, because if you can't adapt to what your teammates or the enemy team are doing, well, you're gonna find life to be quite difficult compared to someone who is very adaptive to the situation. And don't conflate adaptive with flexing. It's not the same thing. If I'm playing Reinhardt, I can adapt the enemy Reinhardt without flexing to a different role, right? Like, adaptation is not the same thing as flexing. Different concepts. So there you go. That was actually all the questions I've got for this week. Not one of the best videos we've had, is it? A lot of, like, weak questions, fake questions, you know, just me making fun of somebody, you know? But hey, that's the thing when you're relying on Reddit for the content, right? Is sometimes you're gonna roll a hard Reddit right there, and it's, you know, we're gonna have the guy that's like, I'm insta-locking Widowmaker, why don't DPS players switch? I don't know, Widowmaker. Why is that happening in quick play? Why is that the case? I can't possibly imagine. So anyway, thank you very much for watching. If you did, if you have any questions, feel free to ask. I'm more than happy to answer. If you haven't already, you can join our Discord and ask questions more directly and have a conversation about them, or just shitpost with us. I've started streaming on Twitch Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, 7 p.m. EST to 11 EST. There's a link to the channel in the description. And if you managed to make it all the way through the video and somehow still enjoyed it, please like the video and subscribe for more content of middling quality in the future. And I hope you found the video helpful.